What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh. This is Native Nomads, and today we're going to be discussing the fact versus fiction when it comes to the Prinsu roof rack for your Subaru Outback or your Subaru Outback Wilderness. Now, before we get started today, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video and every video you will see here on the channel, and that is Adventure Rig Shop. AdventureRigShop.com is where you can find pretty much anything you want for your Subaru Outback or your Subaru Outback Wilderness. I will put the link in the description for you to click on. Use code NOMAD at checkout to save yourself 5% when you decide to purchase your next off-road, overland, or Subaru Outback item. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's talk about the Prinsu roof rack for your Subaru Outback or your Subaru Outback Wilderness. Maybe you are on the fence about purchasing one of these, and there's a few items that I think you should know prior to making that purchase, simply because when I was going down the rabbit hole of roof racks, I was uncertain of which one to buy. I didn't know exactly what I wanted or what I wanted it to look like or how I wanted it to function. And then over time, it kind of evolved, but it evolved because I was sort of pigeonholed into the Prinsu rack because I purchased the Prinsu rack, I installed the Prinsu rack, and once you do that, there's really no backing up. The reason I say that there's no backing up is simply because you do have to make some modifications to your Outback or Outback Wilderness when you decide to take on the job of installing this roof rack. Now, it's not hard. There are a lot of myths that I kind of want to clear up about it, and I'm sure you've seen videos on it, but there's still questions I get probably once a week about this rack. It is the second most asked about item on our Subaru Outback Wilderness. So I figured now would be a good time for us to kind of clear the air on some of those. Now, if you've seen this Prinsu rack or if you haven't, then you know, or maybe you don't know, you do have to take your crossbars that come factory on your Outback or Outback Wilderness, and you have to remove them entirely. And that process can be kind of a pain in the butt. I took this job on myself. Like most of the things on the Outback, I have done pretty much all of the modifications myself. And it wasn't hard, it was just tedious. When you get involved in the process of removing your roof rails from your Outback or Outback Wilderness, what you have to understand is in order to access the bolts that hold those roof rails on, you need to drop your entire headliner. Now, that may not sound like a big deal, and honestly, it's not hard to do. Dropping your headliner is easy. That's definitely the easiest part. The harder part is getting your roof liner or your headliner back on and getting all of those plastic little clips to clip back in their perfect location like it was done from the factory. And that has taken me forever to kind of figure out. Now, if I had somebody who professionally installed it or Subaru installed it, and maybe that's the route you want to go because it will eliminate a lot of these problems, they probably would have been able to get it on the first or second try and it wouldn't have been a huge issue. But for me installing this myself, and maybe if you intend to take this project on yourself as well, you want to understand that dropping the headliner is a little bit difficult, and getting it back up is extremely difficult to do it properly. And if you don't do it properly, when you're driving down the road, you'll hear these little buzzing noises. It's just vibrations. And that's where the headliner is kind of either bumping up against the top of the car, or maybe that clip isn't in all the way and it's making a slight vibration. There's little nuances to it that I didn't even think about when I ripped my headliner down until I tried to put it back on, and I realized, well, that was kind of a huge pain. But all in all, I love the rack, but that's one of the things that you should be aware of if you want to take this project on yourself. Now, the second question I always get asked about the Prinsu roof rack and installing it is, do I have to drill into the top of my car? So I don't think that's the way the question is asked. The way the question is asked is, do I have to drill holes in the top of my car? And the answer to do I have to drill holes in the top of my car is no, because the holes are already there. But for one reason or another, they're in an oval shape versus a circular shape. So that creates problems when you're trying to put a circular bolt through an oval hole. It doesn't go through. I mean, you could probably get it to go through, but you're still going to have the same issue with a little bit of space on either side where that circular bolt goes through that oval hole. So you don't have to drill new holes into your car. But the holes that already exist, you do have to widen them slightly. And I'm talking about a fraction of an inch. I don't remember the exact drill bit size that I used, but it was a fraction of an inch that you had to drill it out. All you have to do is put your drill in really slowly, pull that trigger, and just push it down through. I want to say, I don't even want to say this, maybe 3/8 of an inch is what you have to drill it out to. I totally forget, but whatever that hole size is that's already there and it comes from the factory, you just have to widen it slightly. You're not drilling new holes in the roof of your vehicle. The holes are already there, and the Prinsu rack actually mounts to all the factory spots where your roof rails mounted to. So it's not really as hard as people make it out to be. Once you've dropped the headliner, you've gotten the existing roof rails, the factory roof rails out of there. It's really easy from that point on. The next hardest part is getting your headliner back. Now, the one that everyone wants to know about, the one that everyone asks about, the fear that everybody has with the Prinsu roof rack is, does it leak? And, the question is, or the answer, my God, the answer to that is yes, if you don't do any routine maintenance. Now, there are several products that you can use to prevent leaking at the time of installation, and I would highly recommend you do that. I do not believe that Prinsu requires you to use any type of sealant or adhesive, but I would recommend before you put, there are nylon spacers that sit on top of in the roof channel, on the channel on the roof, and that allows the rack to get bolted through to the nut that is underneath, and it just holds the rack in place. Sorry if that's not a good description. I don't know if I have any B-roll to overlay this, so I'm going to try to do my best to explain it, but there is a hole there, and if you do not use some type of adhesive or some type of sealant / adhesive, then you're probably going to run into problems at some point. Now, that being said, I chase storms in my vehicle regularly. That is pretty much its primary use, other than like my daily driver. But I chase storms in it all the time. I have been through massive hail, massive amounts of rain for a really long time, and I still have yet to get water into the interior of my vehicle. But there's routine maintenance required to make sure that that doesn't happen. And if you're not the routine maintenance kind of person, then maybe this rack isn't for you, because I always, about every 6 or 8 months, add additional sealant around any of the holes where the water could penetrate. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to have water inside my vehicle. I don't want any rust. I don't want any of that to occur. So what I do is I go the extra mile to add additional sealant or adhesive around the top of the nylon spacers that sit over top of the holes that the bolts go through. And it's very simple. You can I use like a Lexol, which is like a roof sealant. There's also lap sealant, which they use for the top of RVs. On my van, I used a bunch of lap sealant to install my fans and everything, and I have no water intrusion there. And you can also use PL Marine. PL Marine is also really good. It's an adhesive and a sealant. So those are like 3 options for you, and I'll try to place those in the description if I can find links for them on Amazon for you, where you can kind of track that stuff down. But if you perform proper routine maintenance, you will not have issues with your roof rack leaking. If you do not, you are setting yourself up for failure. And if anybody says you don't need to use adhesive and sealant, that's fine. You don't have to. But I have heard horror stories of people having water inside their car. You definitely don't want that. Adding some sealant will prevent that from happening, and the routine maintenance of continuing to add that sealant will keep it from ever being a worry for you in your Outback or Outback Wilderness. So let's talk about the 2 other options, and I will put links to the 2 other options in the descriptions as well, so you can kind of take a look at them yourself. I'll probably put some stuff over my stupid face talking, that way you can look at them now and hear me talk at the same time. But the first one is the Front Runner roof rack. AdventureRigShop.com carries the Front Runner roof roof rack with the proper leg attachments that attach directly to the crossbars, the factory crossbars of your Outback or Outback Wilderness. So that eliminates you having to do anything. It speeds up the install time by probably 50%. And all you have to do is assemble the rack and attach the legs to your factory roof rails, tighten them down, and you have a rack. Now, also, that rack can be removed. Same with the Rhino Rack Pioneer platform system. The link for that product will also be in the description. You can take a look. Venture Rig Shop has that one as well. Now, that one is about the same exact thing as the Front Runner. This is just a difference of aesthetics. Like, what do you want it to look like? The Front Runner, I think, looks a little bit better, to be completely honest with you. And Rhino Rack does a fantastic job at pigeonholing you into almost needing to purchase their additional accessories and mounts and things like that. It's a little bit more difficult to interchange them. So just keep that in mind. Rhino Rack is pretty good at like making sure that you have to continue to buy their product, which is a good marketing strategy, good business, but it sucks for the consumer. So, and I also think that it doesn't look as good as the Front Runner roof rack. The Front Runner is the slimline roof rack, and the Pioneer platform system is the Rhino Rack option. They both come with endless mounting solutions. The only beef I have with those, and why I didn't go with those personally, is because the factory roof rails sit about 3 inches off the top of your vehicle. You add another leg plus the rack, and you're adding another 2.5 to 3.5, maybe 4 inches. I would say in total, the bottom of your rack starts about 3.5 to 4 inches off the roof of your vehicle. So you kind of look like, anybody from the 80s would know, you kind of look like, your car kind of looks like it has a flat top. And if you got a flat top, I'm not hating on you. I'm just saying, I don't know if you want your car to have a flat top. So it kind of looks like you got a flat top haircut. You know, you're just like really short on the sides, and then you kind of got a little bit going on up top. So that's why I steered away from that, because I like the look, I like the sleekness, I like the design of the Prinsu rack. And for all of its concerns and what people say about it, it's not nearly as bad as what people may lead you to believe. And I don't think people lead you to believe that for any negative reason. I just feel that people have their opinions, and they want to make sure that they're heard. So if it were me, I would stick with the Prinsu, but the Front Runner and the Rhino Rack are great options. I'll put those links in the descriptions. You can do some research on them. And the reality is they're all pretty much the same exact price. The only thing that's really going to make a difference is the shipping. So there's a few more things that I want to talk about when it comes to the Prinsu roof rack, and the reason I want to talk about them is because they are mistakes that I made when I was putting my rack together and putting my rack on, and I hope that you can avoid them. I always use an impact. I use a 1/4 inch impact on any small items like this. When I'm using small bolts, I always use a 1/4 inch impact, which is fine. You just have to be very careful you don't have a happy trigger finger, because if you do have a happy trigger finger, what you're going to find out is you're going to strip the inside of these bolts out by accident. And not only does it make it very difficult to take them out, but you will have rust that starts to build up on that exposed metal as weather and all of the stuff, all of the elements start to take place on that bolt head. You're going to see a fair amount of rust, and it really looks like crap. I have a couple on there on mine where I just got a little bit overzealous with the impact, and it stripped out the inside of the bolt. Not only is it very hard for me to get those out, it also looks like crap because now I have rust on the side of my rack. So that would be one thing to definitely be mindful of as you're installing this. The second thing is your crossbar system is going to change with your needs. If you don't know your needs, I would be very careful about how many crossbars you put in right away, because you are using thread lock when you put the crossbars in. The screws go directly into the end of the crossbars. So that thread lock holds pretty tight. And when you try to take it out, when I use an impact, if I just got to hit it really quick, and if I hit it too hard, it'll strip it out. It'll strip the bolt head out. So then I'm back to situation number one where I have stripped out bolt heads. So I would put everything on your vehicle. I'd put the rack on your vehicle. I would get the side pieces on, and I would just put maybe one in the middle, one in the back, and one in the front. And when I say one, I mean crossbars. Just put one there to hold everything like structurally sound while you're figuring out what you want to put on your roof. Because if you put all of them in and then you got to take them all out to reconfigure, to maybe add a roam box, maybe you want to add a Max Trax mount, maybe you want to add a shovel mount, whatever it is that you want to put up there, a water port mount, you are going to have to move these crossbars around a lot to find that perfect configuration. So I would caution you against putting all of these crossbars in, tightening them up with thread lock, and then undoing it later to find out what fits your vehicle and the gear that you intend to carry. Okay, that's it. That's enough of me talking. I hope that this video was helpful for you if you're kind of on the fence about the Prinsu rack versus front runner versus crossbars, or the Pioneer rack. I didn't really get into the crossbars, but there's a bunch of crossbars out there. Rhino Rack makes some. There's some, I'll put them in the description, from Adventure Rig Shop. They're all over the place, very easy to find. I don't consider that a rack. I consider that crossbars, so I kind of left those out. But I would not go backwards on my Prinsu rack. I love my Prinsu rack, and I'm lucky and thankful that I did it the way I did, and I use the sealant and adhesive, and I take those steps as precaution to not get water intrusion. If you have had issues with your Prinsu rack, please leave those in the comments, because it's good for people to see both sides of the spectrum. I don't care if you buy it from wherever you buy it, or if you like something else, get something else. Having your input is important, because I've learned that people read through the comments to get user experience, and they don't just listen to me, which is super good. I'm thankful for that, because generally when I get a new product, I do a review or I talk about it really early on, and sometimes things change. But what I can say is, with the Prinsu rack, I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't do it any differently. I do like the other racks and their versatility and being able to take them off, but I'm happy with where I am. And if I had to do it all over again, I would just be a little bit more judicious with the impact driver. That would probably be the one thing that I would make sure I took care of, so I didn't have to backtrack and add new bolts. So that's it. All the links for all the products we talked about are in the description. Use code NOMAD at checkout on adventurerigshop.com to save yourself 5%. I will see you very soon. I am packing for a trip to the Dolomites, where we're going to be climbing and doing photography, some Via Ferratas. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff that we're doing, and I'll probably make a video. I don't know, maybe I'll just get blacked out and go hang out. But either way, I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.